fog-covered rural road winding through dense woods. The sun sets behind the hills, casting long shadows as a lone car drives towards an old, looming farmhouse. In the cold, still heart of winter, in January of 1971, the Perron family found their way to Harrisville, Rhode Island. A new chapter awaited them, one written in whispers, shadows, and things that go bump in the night. The car pulls up to the farmhouse, its wooden exterior creaking with age. Roger, a tall, rugged man with graying hair, steps out and surveys the property. Beside him, Carolyn, her face lined with the weariness of raising 5 children, takes a deep breath, trying to muster enthusiasm. Their 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April, huddle together, wide-eyed as they take in their new home. Roger, grinning, trying to lighten the mood. "Well, girls, what do you think? Plenty of room to run around and play." Andrea, the eldest, with a hint of skepticism. "Plenty of room to get lost, you mean?" Carolyn, gently nudging her husband. "Come on, Roger, it's a fresh start, a new beginning for all of us." Nancy, whispering to Christine, "It feels cold." The family enters the house. The front door creaks ominously as it swings open. Inside, the house is dark, save for the fading daylight seeping through dusty windows. The air is thick with an unsettling stillness. April, the youngest, tugging on her mother's coat. "Mommy, why does it smell funny in here?" Carolyn, distracted, trying to find the light switch. "It's just old, sweetheart. Once we clean it up, it'll feel like home." Christine, eyeing the darkened hallway. "Do you think it's haunted?" Roger, laughing, though his voice wavers slightly. "Haunted? No way. It's just an old house. We'll have it feeling cozy in no time." As night falls, the family begins unpacking. The house seems to settle, groaning under its own weight. Each creak and rustle sends a chill down their spines. Carolyn stands in the kitchen, alone, as she unpacks a box of dishes. The wind howls outside, rattling the windows. Suddenly, she hears a faint, distant whisper. Her name, Carolyn, carried through the air. She freezes, her breath catching in her throat. Carolyn, whispering to herself, shaking it off. Just the wind. Only the wind. Upstairs, the girls are exploring their new rooms. Andrea steps into what will be her bedroom, a large, drafty space with a single small window. She glances around, then stops, noticing something strange. A figure, barely visible, reflected in the mirror. She whips around, but there's nothing there, only shadows. Andrea, to herself, unnerved, "It's just an old mirror, nothing to worry about." Downstairs, Roger lights the fireplace, trying to warm the house. As the flames flicker to life, he catches a glimpse of movement out of the corner of his eye. A shadow darts across the room. He stands up, peering into the darkness, but sees nothing. Roger, calling out, "Carolyn, girls, did someone come down here?" Carolyn, from the kitchen, "No, we're all upstairs. Why?" Roger, muttering to himself, "Must be my imagination." The Perron family had no idea that they were not alone, that the spirits of the past, long forgotten, still lingered in the shadows, waiting. What they thought was a fresh start would soon become a descent into terror. The farmhouse is eerily quiet as the Perron family settles in. Night has fallen, and the house creaks with age as the wind howls outside. Inside, the family is scattered in various rooms, unpacking and exploring their new home. The house had stood for centuries, watching, waiting, biding its time. The Perrons were not the first to live there, but they would soon learn they were not alone. In the dimly lit kitchen, Carolyn is organizing the pantry when she notices something out of place. The broom, which she had left leaning against the wall, is now lying in the middle of the floor. She frowns, picking it up and placing it back, her hand trembling slightly. Carolyn, nervously, "I must be more tired than I thought." In the living room, Roger is fixing the fireplace. He stands up to admire his work when a cold draft sweeps through the room, extinguishing the flames. The temperature drops sharply and Roger shivers, rubbing his hands together. Roger, confused, "Where did that come from? All the windows are closed." Upstairs, the girls are unpacking in their shared bedroom. Christine is sitting on the bed, sorting through her toys, when she notices her doll lying face down on the floor, far from where she left it. She picks it up, turning it over in her hands. Christine to Nancy. Did you move my doll? Nancy, shaking her head, puzzled. No, maybe it fell? In the hallway, Andrea is walking towards the bathroom when she hears faint whispers echoing from the walls. She pauses, straining to listen. The voices are unintelligible, distant but unmistakably there. Her heart races as she quickly turns around, her eyes scanning the empty hallway. Andrea whispering to herself, trying to stay calm. It's just the pipes. Just the pipes. In the kitchen, Carolyn is lighting a candle on the table when she notices a strange smell. Something faint, like rotting fruit, mixed with the scent of old wood. She wrinkles her nose, looking around for the source. Carolyn, to herself, uneasy. What is that smell? I didn't bring anything like that here. As the night progresses, the house seems to come alive with noises. Soft thuds, distant bangs, and the occasional creak of floorboards, as if someone or something is walking through the halls. The family, on edge, tries to dismiss the disturbances as the house settles, but the unease lingers. Roger, trying to sound reassuring as he tucks the girls into bed. It's an old house, girls. Old houses make noises. Don't let it scare you. April, clutching her blanket, wide-eyed. But Daddy, what if it's not just the house? Later that night, Carolyn is lying in bed, unable to sleep. She stares at the ceiling, listening to the rhythmic ticking of the clock. Suddenly, the clock stops. Silence fills the room, thick and oppressive. Then, from the corner of the room, a faint scraping sound begins, growing louder and more insistent. Carolyn bolts upright, her eyes wide with fear. Carolyn, whispering, her voice trembling. Roger, did you hear that? Roger, half asleep, groggily. Hear what? Carolyn, voice shaking. That sound. It's like something's scraping against the walls. Roger sits up, listening. The scraping stops, replaced by a heavy, oppressive silence. They both hold their breath, waiting. Then, as if on cue, the sound resumes, this time louder, closer. Roger leaps out of bed, grabbing a flashlight. Roger, determined. I'll go check it out. Stay here. The house was waking up, its secrets stirring, ready to reveal themselves to the unsuspecting family. What began as small, inexplicable events would soon grow into something far more terrifying as the shadows closed in around the Perron one night at a time. Roger walks through the dark hallway, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The scraping sound leads him to the basement door, which stands slightly ajar. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth. Roger hesitates, his heart pounding, before slowly reaching out to open the door wider. The farmhouse, once quiet with occasional unsettling disturbances, now buzzes with a dark, palpable energy. The Perron family, already on edge, begins to experience the full force of the malevolent spirits that have taken residence in their home. The shadows in the house grew longer, darker, and the air became thick with dread. The spirits were no longer content with mere whispers and shadows. They wanted more. And at the center of it all was one name whispered in fear: Bathsheba. Late at night, Carolyn is alone in the kitchen preparing a late-night snack. She's distracted, lost in thought, when suddenly the kitchen lights flicker and dim. The temperature drops, and a suffocating heaviness fills the room. Carolyn's breath quickens as she feels an icy touch on her shoulder. She spins around, but no one is there, only the lingering cold. Carolyn, whispering, terrified, "Who's there? Show yourself." Upstairs, Andrea and Christine are in their room. The air is still, too still. The girls sit on their beds, tense, when suddenly the door to their closet creaks open on its own. They stare, wide-eyed, as a figure, a dark silhouette, emerges from the shadows. It stands at the foot of Andrea's bed, its presence so oppressive that the girls can barely breathe. Andrea, trembling, whispering, "Do you see it?" Christine, clutching her sister's arm, voice shaking, "It's watching us." Roger, unaware of the terror upstairs, is in the living room when he hears faint sobbing coming from the basement. He grabs a flashlight and heads down, the stairs creaking under his weight. As he reaches the bottom, the sobbing stops. He shines the light around, only to catch a glimpse of a woman's face, pale and contorted with anguish, staring at him from the shadows. The light flickers and she's gone. Roger, breathing heavily, his voice shaking, Who are you? What do you want?" The next day, the family gathers in the living room. They are all pale, shaken, unable to ignore the increasingly hostile presence in the house. Carolyn, desperate, holds up an old book she found in the attic, its pages yellowed with age. "Carolyn," voice trembling, "I found something that might explain all of this. Her name was Bathsheba Sherman. She lived on this land in the 1800s. They say she was a witch, that she sacrificed a child to the devil and then cursed this place before she died." Andrea, shuddering, "I've heard her. She whispers in my ear at night. She says terrible things." Roger, angry, protective, "This has to stop. We need help. We can't do this alone." As night falls, the hauntings grow more violent. Carolyn is in the bathroom when she feels a sharp pain in her leg. She looks down to see a small, circular wound as if something sharp had pierced her skin. Blood trickles down her leg. She gasps in pain and fear, backing away as the mirror fogs over, revealing the words, "Leave now," scrawled in what looks like blood. Carolyn, screaming, panicked, "Roger, help me!" The family rushes to Carolyn's side, but the house seems to come alive with malevolent energy. Doors slam shut, furniture rattles, and the air is filled with the sound of ghostly wails. Amidst the chaos, a shadowy figure, Bathsheba, appears in the corner of the room. Her face is twisted with rage, her eyes burning with hatred. Bathsheba, voice distorted, echoing, "You are mine." Andrea, horrified, barely able to speak, "We have to get out, now." The Perrons were no longer simply living in the house. They were prisoners, trapped by the malevolent spirits that dwelled within. And Bathsheba, with her dark history and insatiable thirst for vengeance, would stop at nothing to drive them out or destroy them. The farmhouse at dusk. The sky is overcast and a storm brews in the distance. Inside, the atmosphere is thick with tension. The once subtle disturbances have escalated, and the spirit of Bathsheba Sherman has made her malevolent presence unmistakably known, focusing her wrath on Carolyn Perron. In the dark recesses of the old farmhouse, Bathsheba's spirit simmered with centuries of rage. Her target was clear, her intentions vile. Carolyn Perron would suffer as she once had in life. Carolyn stands in front of a mirror in her bedroom, her face pale and drawn. She hasn't slept in days. Dark circles shadow her eyes and her hands tremble as she brushes her hair. The room suddenly grows cold and the lights flicker before going out entirely, plunging the room into darkness. Carolyn, whispering, her voice cracking with fear, "Not again, please, not again!" As she fumbles to find a candle, a sharp, icy wind sweeps through the room and the door slams shut behind her. Carolyn spins around, her breath visible in the freezing air. From the corner of her eye, she sees a shadow, Bathsheba, lurking in the darkness. The figure moves closer, a menacing presence that seems to suck the light from the room. "Bathsheba," voice hissing, filled with venom, "you dare to claim what is mine?" Carolyn gasps as she feels a sudden searing pain on her back. She cries out, stumbling forward, dropping the candle. She lifts her shirt to see claw marks etched into her skin, red and raw, as if burned into her flesh. Carolyn, screaming frantic, "Roger, help me!" Roger rushes into the room, forcing the door open against some unseen force. He finds Carolyn on the floor, clutching her back in pain, tears streaming down her face. The room is eerily silent now, but the air still hums with a menacing energy. Roger, desperate, pulling her into his arms. "Carolyn, what happened? Talk to me!" Carolyn, sobbing, barely coherent. She's here. Bathsheba. She's trying to take me." Later that night, Carolyn lies in bed, exhausted and terrified. She tries to sleep, but every time she closes her eyes, she feels Bathsheba's presence looming over her. Her mind is tormented with visions. Bathsheba's face, twisted in anger, flashes before her, accompanied by the cries of an infant, the sounds of rituals long forgotten. Bathsheba, whispering in Carolyn's ear as she drifts between sleep and wakefulness. "You cannot escape me. I will take everything from you, your mind, your body, your soul." The next morning, Carolyn awakens with fresh bruises on her arms and legs. She stares at them in horror, her body shaking with fear. The others notice her deteriorating state, but she refuses to leave the house, determined to protect her family. Andrea, pleading, her voice filled with desperation. "Mom, you're not safe here. We need to leave before it gets worse." Carolyn, weakly but with determination. "I can't. She won't let us go. Not until she has what she wants." As days turn into weeks, Bathsheba's attacks on Carolyn grow more vicious. The spirit begins to manipulate the environment around Carolyn. Doors slam shut just as she approaches. Objects are hurled at her with violent force, and shadows seem to close in whenever she's alone. The physical toll on Carolyn is visible. She becomes gaunt, her skin pale and her eyes hollow, as if Bathsheba is draining her life force. One night, Carolyn is jolted awake by the sensation of being strangled. She thrashes in bed, gasping for air as invisible hands tighten around her throat. Her vision blurs as she desperately claws at her neck, her voice reduced to a choked whisper. Carolyn, gasping, her voice barely audible. "Help me!" The torment was relentless, and Bathsheba's grip on Carolyn tightened with every passing day. The lines between the living and the dead blurred, as the malevolent spirit sought to claim what she believed was rightfully hers, a soul broken and twisted in torment. The family, desperate and fearing for Carolyn's life, reach out to Ed and Lorraine Warren, paranormal investigators known for their work in cases like this. As the Warrens arrive, they can sense the dark, oppressive energy that hangs over the house. Lorraine, a clairvoyant, immediately senses Bathsheba's presence, her face grim as she turns to Carolyn. Lorraine, softly but with resolve. "Bathsheba won't stop until she destroys you, Carolyn. We need to act quickly or she'll take you and your family with her." The Perron family farmhouse is cloaked in darkness. Shadows move unnaturally across the walls, and the once quiet house is now filled with an unsettling presence. The family huddled together in the living room, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. The air is thick with dread as they await the arrival of Ed and Lorraine Warren, the renowned paranormal investigators. Desperation led the Perron family to the doorstep of Ed and Lorraine Warren, hoping that the couple's experience with the supernatural could save them from the horrors that had taken over their lives. Little did they know, the arrival of the Warrens would not bring peace, but rather unleash an even greater terror. The sound of a car pulling up outside breaks the tense silence. Roger rushes to the door, flinging it open as Ed and Lorraine Warren step out, their expressions serious, their movements deliberate. Lorraine, a soft-spoken woman with an air of quiet authority, immediately senses the darkness within the house. Roger, pleading, voice shaking, "Thank God you're here. We don't know what else to do. It's tearing us apart." Lorraine, her eyes scanning the house, her voice calm but firm. "We're going to help you, Mr. Perron, but you need to prepare yourselves. This is not like anything we've dealt with before." Ed, nodding, his tone grave. "This house is diabolically infested. Whatever's here, it's powerful, and it's feeding off your fear." The family leads the Warrens into the house. Lorraine moves through each room, her senses heightened. She feels the overwhelming presence of something malevolent, something that has taken root deep within the house. As she enters the basement, she is overcome by a wave of nausea, her vision blurring as she sees the spirit of Bathsheba Sherman, her eyes burning with hate. Lorraine, voice trembling as she steadies herself against the wall. "Bathsheba. She's here. She's furious. She won't stop until she gets what she wants, and what she wants is Carolyn." Carolyn, horrified, clutching her chest. "What does she want with me? Why me?" Lorraine, turning to Carolyn, her eyes filled with sympathy. "She sees you as a threat, another woman in her house. She was a cruel woman in life, and in death, she's even worse. She won't rest until she's driven you out, or taken you over." Ed and Lorraine gather the family in the living room, explaining the gravity of the situation. Ed lays out a plan, a seance to confront Bathsheba directly and try to force her to leave. The atmosphere is tense, the air thick with fear and anticipation. Ed, calm but serious. "Seances are dangerous. We'll be opening a door to the other side, and we have no control over what comes through. But it's the only way to communicate with Bathsheba, to make her show herself. Roger, hesitant but determined. If it's the only way to save my family, we'll do it. Night falls and the seance begins. The room is dark, lit only by a few flickering candles. The family and the Warrens sit around a table, hands joined, as Ed begins to call out to Bathsheba. The air grows colder and the flames of the candles flicker wildly. The room seems to close in around them, shadows stretching and twisting unnaturally. Ed, voice strong, commanding. Bathsheba Sherman, I command you to reveal yourself. Show us your true form. Lorraine, eyes closed, focusing, her voice trembling. She's here. She's coming. Suddenly, the room erupts in chaos. The table shakes violently, and objects are hurled across the room by an unseen force. The temperature plummets, and a deep guttural growl echoes through the house. Bathsheba's spirit manifests in the room, her face contorted with rage, her eyes burning with a supernatural fire. Carolyn is thrown back in her chair, her body convulsing as Bathsheba tries to take control of her. Carolyn, screaming, her voice twisted with pain and terror. Get out of my head! Get out! Lorraine, reaching out to Carolyn, her voice urgent. Carolyn, fight her! Don't let her in! Ed, shouting over the noise. Bathsheba, leave this family alone. You have no power here. As the seance reaches its peak, Carolyn's body levitates off the chair, her eyes rolling back as she speaks in a voice that is not her own. A deep, malevolent voice that chills everyone to the bone. Bathsheba, through Carolyn, voice distorted and filled with malice. You cannot stop me. She belongs to me now. Roger, desperate, tears streaming down his face. Carolyn, fight her. Please don't leave us. Lorraine, using all her strength, reaches out to Carolyn, placing a crucifix on her chest. The room is filled with a blinding light as Bathsheba's spirit is forced back, screaming in rage as she retreats into the shadows. Carolyn collapses to the floor, unconscious but alive. The room falls silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting slightly, but the fear remains. The seance may have driven Bathsheba back, but her presence lingered, her malevolent spirit lurking in the dark corners of the house. The Perrons had survived the night, but the battle was far from over, and the shadow of Bathsheba Sherman would continue to haunt them. The farmhouse stands silent and dark, a place that once held the Perron family in a grip of terror. Though the Warrens' intervention had driven Bathsheba's spirit back, the hauntings persisted, a constant reminder that the malevolent forces within the house were far from vanquished. For nearly a decade, the Perron family endured the unimaginable. Despite the Warrens' efforts, the darkness clung to the house, and the spirits refused to leave. It wasn't until 1980, when the family finally fled, that the house grew quiet. But the horrors they experienced would leave a mark that time could never erase. The year is 1980. The Perron family, weary and broken, stands in front of the house one last time. The moving truck is packed, and the air is heavy with a mixture of relief and lingering fear. Carolyn, her face etched with years of torment, takes one final look at the house, her eyes filled with both sorrow and anger. Carolyn, quietly to herself, You didn't win, Bathsheba. We're leaving, and you'll be alone. Forever. Roger, gently placing his hand on her shoulder. It's over, Carolyn. We're free now. Carolyn, shaking her head, her voice trembling. We might be leaving, but the memories, the fear, they'll follow us. We'll never truly be free. The house that had once been a sanctuary became a prison, and the spirits within it remained, bound to the land. But the story of the Perron family did not end with their escape. Their ordeal would become the stuff of legend, inspiring fear and fascination for generations to come. In a small town, Andrea Perron, now an adult, walks into the theater with a group of friends. She sits quietly, her face expressionless as the film begins. The sound of the wind howling and the ominous creaks of the old house fill the theater. As the opening scenes play, Andrea's mind drifts back to her childhood, to the terror that haunted her and her family. Andrea, whispering to herself, her voice filled with both pain and resolve. They'll never really understand. what we went through, what we survived. The Perron family story became a cultural phenomenon, immortalized in the 2013 horror film The Conjuring. The movie terrified audiences worldwide, but for the Perrons, it was more than just a story. It was a reality that they had lived, a darkness that had touched their lives in ways that could never be fully captured on film. Andrea, whispering with a mix of sorrow and determination, "We survived, and that's something no spirit could ever take away." The legacy of the Perron family's haunting lives on, a tale of fear, survival, and the unseen forces that lurk just beyond the veil of our world. And though the farmhouse may stand empty, its walls still hold the memories of the terror that once reigned there, memories that will never fade. The story of the Perron family's haunting has captured the imaginations of many, but not everyone is convinced. As the tale spread, so too did the questions that challenged the very foundation of what had been accepted as truth. Sarah, speaking to her editor, her voice filled with determination. "There's so much that doesn't add up. The stories about Bathsheba Sherman being a witch, the infant's death. There's no solid evidence, just rumors and legends. I think it's time we dig deeper." Editor, nodding, intrigued. "It's a story that sells, no doubt. But if there's no proof, people deserve to know that too." Norma, sighing, her voice weary. "You're not the first, you know. Since that movie came out, we've had people trespassing, wanting to see ghosts that don't exist." Sarah, gently. "I understand, but I'm here to get the facts. You've lived here for years now. Have you ever experienced anything unusual?" Norma invites Sarah inside. The house is quiet, peaceful, a stark contrast to the tales of terror that have surrounded it. They sit in the living room and Norma hands Sarah a cup of tea. Norma, firmly, "Nothing. Not a whisper, not a cold spot, nothing. The only spirits here are the ones people bring with them, stories they've heard, imaginations running wild. We've done our research too. There's no record of Bathsheba ever being a witch, no trial, no evidence of the kind of horrors they claim happened here." Sarah, taking notes, nodding. "So you believe the Perrons were mistaken, or perhaps exaggerating?" Norma, leaning forward, her voice steady. "I think they believed what they experienced, but belief doesn't make it true. Fear can make you see things that aren't there. And once a story like that takes hold, it's hard to separate fact from fiction." Sarah, whispering to herself, a hint of doubt creeping in. How much of this was real, and how much was just a story? Norma, to herself, voice tinged with sadness. All they see is the legend. They don't care about the truth. The tale of the Perron haunting, while captivating, is mired in controversy. As the years passed, the line between reality and fiction blurred, leaving behind a legacy that is as much about fear as it is about faith. The truth, like the spirits said to haunt the farmhouse, remains elusive, hidden in the shadows of history. What began as a chilling real-life experience for the Perron family would go on to become one of the most iconic stories in paranormal history, thanks in large part to its depiction in a film that would terrify millions and leave an indelible mark on popular culture. Emily, whispering to her friend, wide-eyed, "I didn't think it would be this intense. Do you think any of this could really happen?" Friend, nervously trying to laugh it off, "I don't know. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it?" The Conjuring did more than just entertain. It resurrected a story that had been whispered about for decades and catapulted it into the global spotlight. The Perron haunting became more than just a case of paranormal activity. It became a legend, forever etched in the annals of horror history. Emily, shivering, pulling her jacket tighter, "I can't stop thinking about it. How much of that do you think really happened?" Friend, serious, glancing around nervously. "Enough that people are still talking about it. And now, with this movie, it's going to be on everyone's mind. Discover the true story behind The Conjuring." People browse the books, their curiosity piqued by the film. Bookstore customer, to the clerk, holding a book titled House of Darkness. House of Light. I had no idea this was based on a true story. It's fascinating and terrifying. Clerk, nodding knowingly. The movie's just the tip of the iceberg. The real story is even more chilling. People are flocking here to get the full story. Professor, lecturing with slides of the Perron farmhouse and scenes from the movie. What The Conjuring did was take a regional ghost story and turn it into a global phenomenon. The film's success shows how powerful storytelling can be in shaping our collective fears and beliefs. The Perron haunting is now part of our cultural fabric, an example of how real-life events can be amplified and immortalized through film. New owner to spouse, watching the crowd with a mix of frustration and resignation. It's like they think it's a theme park. They don't realize this is our home, not a horror movie set. Spouse, sighing, nodding. But that's what happens when a story like this catches fire. It becomes bigger than the truth. It becomes legend. The Conjuring didn't just tell a story. It revived a legend, blurring the lines between reality and fiction, and in doing so, solidified the Perron haunting as one of the most famous cases in paranormal history. The legacy of the Perron family's experience continues to influence and inspire, reminding us that sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that never truly end.